Well, my friends, Bradley J here in the Bradley J Show. Super excited for this Sunday. You know, every month we do a Beatles show. They do a Beatles show. There is a Beatles show called Come Together, and I just, MC it. But I'm super happy to watch it and experience it. If you haven't, watch this thing we're going to do right now, and you'll get a sense of it, and I bet you'll want to go. So who do we have with us here? We have Chachi Lepret, who is, and I always forget to mention this part. You're the host of Breakfast with the Beatles. I never say that. I know there's other stuff. There's Stephanie Lepret, who is the executive producer of this big show. There's John Duke Logan, former New England Patriots magician, and he's currently he goes on the road all the time with Super Bowl winner Malcolm Mitchell, and he's back from that to do this gig. And we have member of the big band that's coming up in this month's edition. We have Neil from While My Guitar Gently Weeps, which is a power trio kind of out of Berklee. So they have the chops. And it's going to be spectacular. And we've been doing this. This group has been doing this for nigh on 2 years, more than 2 years now.
More than 2 years. We started 2 years ago, September. So we're now in year number 3, and we're there all through 2025.
You have a residency at City Winery.
That's right.
And when you hear the excitement and find out what's going on, you're going to want to buy tickets. And I believe, check me if I'm wrong, that is the posted up there, citywinery.com/Boston is where you get tickets.
That is correct.
And when you get to the website, you scroll to Come Together. You get the tickets in advance, super low dough show. Money super well spent. Let's get to it. This time, we're celebrating the White Album. And as I mentioned, we're going to have a band, and there's going to be the Beatles magic. You'll get that explained, prizes, etc. And we're going to go through all that. So, again, it's Chachi, Stephanie, John, and Neil. And Chachi, can you start and talk about why the White Album is so cool, so important, such a big deal?
Well, it is a big deal, and this year we're celebrating the 56th anniversary of the White Album, and the show on Sunday will encompass all kinds of White Album stories, film clips, and the White Album is important. They had just went through Sgt. Pepper. They released that. It was a huge undertaking, the first rock and roll concept album, everything really dramatic from the cover, artwork, to the music on the album. It was just an amazing journey. And so after they did that and time went by, John and the Beatles wanted to get back to a rock and roll album, just get in there and cut a bunch of tracks, mostly written while they were in India, which was they're really a really transformative period of creativity. They had so much spare time because they spent a lot of hours meditating. And when they weren't meditating, they were writing. And the majority of those tracks are on the White Album. And many people feel like, it was, you look at the album cover, Sgt. Pepper was elaborate. The White Album, just a plain white album. They wanted to get back to basics. A lot of people think of the White Album as, 4 solo albums because each Beatle would perform their own song. And they'd use all the studios at Abbey Road. So Paul would be in one studio recording his song. John would be in another studio recording his. And George and Ringo would go where they were needed and vice versa. So it was a big, elaborate undertaking, 30 songs. And I remember buying the album in 68 because Beatle albums were fairly inexpensive, a little under $5 in those early days. But $11.98 for the album, 30 songs. You got a 2-sided poster with the lyrics, a collage of photographs. You got the 8x10 photos, and it blew everyone away because the diversity of that album, hard rock, Helter Skelter, Paul's Honey Pie, George's Piggies and Savoy Truffle, While My Guitar Gently Weeps with Eric Clapton. I mean, it checked all the boxes. And to this day, people love the White Album, and we're celebrating it on Sunday.
So that's their 9th studio album, if I'm not mistaken. And had they reached a point where they were having any tensions? And did going to India make things weirder?
Well, it wasn't necessarily that, but yeah, there was some tension during the White Album. So much so that at one point, George Martin's assistant was on vacation, And George Martin was getting fed up with the running around and sometimes bickering because Yoko was there a lot.
Oh, yeah, man.
Created tension. And so George Martin's assistant gets back from vacation. He doesn't even see him. He leaves a note. Hey, welcome back. I'm going on vacation now. Take care of whatever the boys want. Because George had to get out. And George Martin needed to be persuaded to come back to record Abbey Road because he couldn't deal with the stress in the studio, the bickering amongst the band members. But
let me make an observation and see if you agree. And I'm not just picking on Yoko, because Yoko's interesting. But it seems to me the more they allowed their wives to creep into the recording process, the worse it got, the more hassle it became. And I really noticed that in that most recent documentary. What is that, Get Back?
Yes.
And the wives are in the studio? Come on. I mean, if you're a wife in the band, okay, that's fine. But if you're just a hanger-on or a wife, what are you doing?
Well, the early days of the Beatles, the understanding was the four Beatles were in the studio, no one else. Of course, George Martin, the engineer, Jeff Emmerich. Sometimes they'd invite a guest in, but it was off limits to even their girlfriends and their wives.
Yeah.
The White Album situation changed that. John met Yoko. He divorced Cynthia. And John and Yoko were doing heroin. They were doing some drugs. And, the other three were like, hey, I thought there were no women allowed, no outsiders allowed in the sessions. And John didn't even ask. He just brought her. At one point, they brought a bed in for her because she wasn't feeling well.
That right there.
At
Come
one point,
on, man.
Yoko, I'm telling you, at one point, Yoko stole a cookie out of George's guitar case, and George got all upset that Yoko could just walk over and take something out of his guitar case. And then at some point, various times, she would offer her opinion on tracks, and she would call, well, Beatles should, and Paul would say, it's the Beatles. So there was a lot of tension, but through that, they got back together and recorded Great Abbey Road. So
Did they ever say, hey, John, stop with the Yoko thing? Why didn't they say that?
That was said in not so many words, but John was the leader of the band. He founded the Beatles. He was credited as the guy in charge. So they always,
It was a case of which would you rather? Like, do you want to deal with John, like, pitching a fit, or you want to, like, put up with Yoko and her band?
I see.
And all of that just destroys the energy of what's going on in the studio.
And amongst those couple of years, I mean, they put out the Two Virgins LP with John and Yoko completely naked front and back. That caused a little bit of stress too.
Well, they credited John with being the leader. Really, it was Paul, right? When it comes down to it, they're futzing around. What are we going to do? Then in the morning, Paul would come in. Here's what we're going to do. Boom, boom, boom. It's done. Let's move on. So
and
that's my take on that.
And that created some animosity. Remember, Brian Epstein had passed away too, so they were kind of lost there. And before the White Album, they put out Magical Mystery Tour, the 1-hour TV special that got completely panned in Europe and the UK. And so they came off of their first loss in the eyes of the press. They put out, Magical Mystery Tour. So there was stress from that. And they were lost. They weren't businessmen. And the White Album was the first Beatles album on the Apple label. So now they were label managers and label owners. And so there was all business involved with the creativity and all help.
Okay.
And all the money going out the back door, not being mismanaged, and whoops.
Yeah. Even the front door.
We're going to get to you, Neil, and we're going to get to you, John, as well. And everybody, you see how much more fun it is to get involved with something when you know the details and the backstory? Well, you'll get a lot of that at this event on Sunday at the City Winery. Come together, City Winery, Sunday at noon, doors at 11. I will see you there. I'll meet you. I'll greet you, etc. Whatever you want within reason. And excuse me. And now let's talk more about the show. And I guess we'll do this. Go to John and the Magic, Stephanie, and all the other stuff. And then the band will finish up with Neil and his band, While My Guitar Gently Weeps. So, John, explain how you insinuate magic into the show, how it works so well, how everybody loves it.
Thank you.
1, 2, 3, go.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so our goal is to create an experience where you're learning about the Beatles in a really fun way, right? That's kind of our goal of the show. So I have been performing magic for almost 20 years now. So, but I do a little magic a little bit differently, where I like to teach people about things through the magic, right? So in this show, we'll be talking about how the Beatles were in India for the White Album. And then after that, I do a trick where we, the audience, we create a destination, a trip as well. And we do a little something with that as well. So again, you learn about it through the magic. Also, we were just talking about, when Brian Epstein, their manager, passed away, and then the White Album was kind of iffy because it was kind of that transition period. They didn't really know what they wanted to do. Well, there's also a few months later where they met Alan Klein, and Alan Klein was this big business guy in the industry. He talks to John Lennon, and John Lennon really liked him. He said, "Yeah, I think we should hire Alan Klein to take over our business." And George thought he was cool. Ringo thought he was cool. But Paul, there was something suspicious. Paul said, "I don't know if I trust this Alan Klein guy." And they all got into this big fight, and they ended up signing Alan Klein. But long story short, Paul was correct because Alan Klein kind of scammed them through a bunch of money, all this type of stuff. So one of the tricks I do is I explain that story, and I explain how Paul McCartney was really good at observing people and reading people and kind of tap into their subconscious. So then I do
Here we go.
that, and I do a little mind reading experiment, see if I can try to guess what people are thinking of based off the strategies that Paul used to read Alan Klein. So it's fun. So you learn about the Beatles, you learn about underground stories of the Beatles, but through the magic as well. It's a lot of audience participation as well. We'll have big jumbo dice. We'll have a dartboard. We'll be passing some cards around. I'll be throwing some cards. It's always a good time.
It certainly is. And your magic, by the way, is just getting more jaw-dropping by the month.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
You're
it.
very welcome. Now, Stephanie LaPrette is the executive producer. First, tell me about the prizes, then about special guest Rod Davis, and other stuff that is, other side attractions.
Well, it is truly a multimedia experience. I mean, it's nonstop entertainment because it's John's magic. It's all the deep knowledge about the Beatles, rare film clips, prizes, tons of engagement, and a fabulous, fabulous Beatle band that we have. While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and what's really cool about them is they're very heavy and they do instrumental Beatles and just bring it. So that's going to be terribly, terribly exciting. So nonstop going. We have great prizes, and Mr. Chachi LaPrette has one right here.
One of the prizes will be from Hasbro, the new Beatles Monopoly game. Oh, sorry. And they provided some games for us to give away. We're giving one away there. Plus, we'll have authentic original Beatles albums that are provided every month. For 2+ years, he's been doing this. Every month, he gives us a handful of original Beatle albums. Bob Walsh at Cheap Thrills Music and more in Dedham, Mass. He used to run Tower Records in Boston, and he's always generous with his prizes. We give those away. And before we get to Neil, I do want to tell you about our special Zoom guest. Every show we have an amazing Zoom guest. This guy is historic. I became friends with him over the years, especially when the Quarrymen came to Boston as they did a short American tour. Rod Davis will Zoom in live from Liverpool. Rod Davis was a member of John Lennon's Quarrymen band. He played banjo. He was on the flatbed, that photo that everyone sees of John as a teenager. The day he met Paul, Rod Davis was there. He was playing banjo. Julia, John's mom, would play banjo with Rod and John at Julia's house. So this guy is legendary. We're going to talk about the day John met Paul, and I want to ask him about what he was thinking from 57 when John met Paul through the 60s into the White Album when John looked completely different, long hair. He was certainly participating in drugs. He was with Yoko. I'm interested in hearing from Rod about through those years, what did he think of the Beatles as they went to huge, major stardom? So Rod will be with us, and he is legendary, the Quarrymen. And the Quarrymen wrote a song about me and put it in their last album. So we'll play a little clip of that. It's called Number 6, Chachi Chachi. The Quarrymen actually did that as a thank you. We'll play
That's pretty cool. That's crazy cool.
It's very
Are there quarries in Liverpool or something? Like a
They went to
quarryman
Quarry
as
Bank
a
High School. That's where they went to high school. Quarry Bank High School, where John was there with Rod Davis. So that's where Quarrymen comes from.
I mean, where can you see all that? Where can you see? You're not going to see Rod Davis. You're not going to see all the magic, all the deep knowledge, and a great Beatle band.
But you have to be in the audience because
Mhm.
you have to be in the audience. And
Yeah.
I got to say, it's so fun. You get the greatest band of all time, and you get to swim in this deep end of the Beatles pool with these guys, and that's cool. By the way, did you know? You probably did know this, as you know everything. There's a venue in Liverpool on 17 Love Lane known as the Quarry or Quarry. It's like a bar, I guess, or it's a
So,
place where bands play. I didn't know that. Of course, it makes sense.
Bradley travels the world. So.
Well, I have not been to that. I just looked it up.
Oh, okay.
I've never been to Liverpool. Is it Liverpool up north in the industrial part?
It's part of the shore. I'm not. I don't know the
It's-
geographical part. Of
More
it.
towards the West Coast.
All right, now let's get to the band. The real frosting on the cake for me is the live music that is served up at the City Winery for your events every month, and we have something completely different this time. We have While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and one of the persons in the power trio is with us. Neil, how you doing?
I'm good. Hold on. My phone was acting crazy. I'm sorry. It's
Is-
Can you hear me?
Good. So can you hear me now? You're back in the car, which is a good little studio.
Perfect. Let's go.
Okay. Turns out cars are really good little recording and broadcast studios. So tell me a little bit about the history of the band. I know you guys are Berklee students, which is always a good sign, and the band's been together a while. So you take the wonderfulness of the Beatles songs and the song structure, and you take you guys chops and stick them on there. It's got to be pretty great. Tell me anything you want us to know about the band.
Great. Yeah. So we're a power trio. We're from Berklee, but we're not jazz. We're more,
you don't have the Berklee stigma.
Yeah, right. When you
Okay.
say Berklee, people get that in their mind. So we try to keep the essence of the rock and the energy and
Right.
the vibe of the Beatles. There's three of us, three generations of Beatles fans. Our drummer Matt Steady Rossetti is in his last year at Berklee, actually. And then our bass player Jim Sambataro, he's of the older generation, and I'm kind of right in the middle there. And we all love the Beatles, and are just so happy to bring it to people in a fresh way.
How did you come to get involved with the Beatles? Through your parents?
Yeah. I was raised by a couple of hippies, like a folk musician and an artist. And so we always had music on. And a lot of times that was the Beatles. It was mostly the Beatles on my mom's side and the Stones on my dad's side. And, I gravitated towards the Beatles, I guess, since the very beginning.
Interesting. And you said third generation. Does that mean even their parents were into the Beatles? Did you say third generation?
Oh, no, probably not.
Okay.
Probably not.
Maybe I must have misheard. I'm thinking, wow.
Those long-haired hippies, they were like, no, that's not for our kids.
So when you come out on stage, what's it like? Are you, like you say, power trio? What do you mean by that?
Oh, well, yeah, it's just the three of us jamming. So there's no vocals, all instrumental.
Yeah.
A lot of energy, typically we'll have a multimedia presentation behind us, video for people to watch. Since we don't have vocals, we want to give them something to latch on to and entertain them while we're playing the tunes. And yeah, it's silly. Sometimes we'll throw out, like I tried it in the same way that Chachi does, or John, throw out some sort of trivia about tunes before and after and things I've picked up along the way, try to educate. And yeah, educate.
Okay. Neil, try to stump Chachi with a Beatles question.
Don't do that.
No, you don't want to do that? Okay, fine.
No. If Neil wants to, but I'm not. Hey.
Yes,
I
you
don't think
are.
that'd be easy to do.
Totally heavy. So good.
Oh.
He's like,
All right.
Really an experience.
Let's not forget about how you win the prizes, because that in itself is fun. And let's not forget about the clips and stuff like that. How do you win the prizes? You see, I like quizzes. I never get them right, but I like the challenge. I like Jeopardy, and this is not as hard as Jeopardy, but you do have trivia questions. That's one way to win the prizes, right?
That's correct. And what we try to do is we ask a question, but we don't just let someone answer. Okay, that's great. Let's move on. Every trivia question comes with a story. It's part of the, peeling back the onion of the Beatles. So we ask a question, get the answer, and then we give some backstory to it. So all the questions pretty much related to the White Album and or Rod Davis from the Quarrymen. And so every question comes with a story, images, film, an explanation, and it gives the younger fans more perspective, and certainly the older fans love it as well.
And we do drawings, so you don't have to know. So there's everybody has a chance to win.
Right. When Stephanie says we do drawings, it means they take they draw a ticket. There's a number. You don't have to draw pictures of the Beatles.
No, but when you walk into the venue,
incorporate that sometime.
When you walk into the venue, someone gives you a little questionnaire with 5 questions, and with a pencil. And before the show begins, you write down what you think the answers are. And so you can write something funny if you want. You don't have to know all the answers. And then you put it into a bag that's near the stage before the show begins. And then the show begins. And then when the trivia portion of the show comes up, we go over to the bag. We put one of the questions up on the big screen. We pull out a random answer. If your name is on that answer, you get it correct, then you win a prize. So we try to make it really fair for everyone. And then sometimes we'll just do a raffle where you don't have to have any of the answers correct. We just pull a piece of paper out. Right. If your name is on it, you win a prize. So we try to make it fun for everyone and try to make it fair for everyone, even if you're a Beatles rookie or a Beatles expert.
And if you ever, have any question about the Beatles and Chachi or any of these people are around, you can ask them. You can talk to Chachi, you can talk to Stephanie, John, Neil. It's a pretty intimate situation. You can talk to me if you have any desire to do that. I have a general question about the Beatles, and I only ask it because I saw it on TV, something about it a couple days ago. And this is what a rookie I am. I don't know, but so Eric Clapton did Layla, and Layla was about George's wife. Is that it?
That is correct.
And it was weird because he's all saying, you got me on my knees. I love you, love you, love you, kind of. And she was married to George Harrison. That was kind of inappropriate, right?
Yes, it's a strange story with Eric and Patty Harrison. Patty Harrison was a muse to several different rock stars. Ronnie Wood from the Stones loved her. Certainly George did. But Eric Clapton had a huge crush on Patty. He wrote Layla, Bell Bottom Blues is about Patty. And he made it clear to George that, he was in love with his wife. And George and Eric were very, very close. And George's relationship with Patty was changing. And so she left George. She didn't necessarily want to, but she left George and married Eric. And George and Eric remained friends until the end. They went on tour together in '91 in Japan. But yeah, Layla is Patty Harrison.
It's a Savoy throuple.
And so what do you mean maybe didn't necessarily want to leave George?
Well, George is changing a lot, and he wasn't necessarily the loyal husband that he should have been.
Oh, right, of
Things
course.
like that. There are other stories about George. He was a human being. He was just a guy, So there were things going on that all added up to. And Eric was just like persistent. And when she heard Layla, she was like, "Oh my God!" But you know how many songs were written about Patty Harrison? Is a long list.
And what was the thing about her? Why did everybody love her so much?
Well, she certainly, she was a model in the 60s, very attractive woman and very nice. We met Patty.
She had that Beatle look,
She had a Beatle look, and she was in TV commercials, and that's how she got into the movie.
Personality, like really funny or something.
Well, I also think it's because it's a closed system. Like when you're artists and you're that big, it's like you don't just trust bringing outsiders in.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of
good point.
Stay with
you might want to date. You might want to not date Susie regular cream cheese because she might be on the take. She might be a gold digger. You don't know.
And she
People
was
talk.
she was a successful model back then. She was doing television commercials, and Dick Lester was directing A Hard Day's Night, and he wanted a couple of schoolgirl type looks, and he remembered Patty from the commercials that she did for him. And so he called Patty Harrison, gave her a role in A Hard Day's Night. She had one word, prisoners. And George fell in love with her right there, asked her like a day or two later, will you marry me? And Patty says, I have a boyfriend. Then she eventually leaves the boyfriend and starts dating George. So she was well known, and she was like a Twiggy type back then.
Twiggy.
People, really knew who she was. She was a celebrity.
Just unrelated. Love Twiggy, but Edie Sedgwick from the Warhol Factory, she was my girl. I read everything about her. All right, Neil, are you ready to rock on Sunday?
I am ready to rock. I'm very excited about it.
John, are you ready to blow people's minds on Sunday?
Can't wait. It's always a fun time.
Stephanie, you ready to produce?
Totally.
Okay, Chachi, and we know that Chachi's always ready. So we're all going to see you there. Folks, if you miss out, you're going to miss out on a lot of love and just a wonderful time for very low dough. It's easy. It's a great environment. And for your all sakes, I just experienced it once, and I just think you'll keep coming back. Thanks all. I appreciate you coming together and talking about this. And I hope to see everybody on Sunday, noontime, City Winery, doors at 11, citywinery.com/Boston for tickets. Get them in advance. You don't want to miss out. All right, I guess that's it. Are we good?
Can I just close with one thing?
Yeah.
While My Guitar Gently Weeps .band, that's how you can find them.
Oh,
and
yeah.
A power trio to me is you have 3 guys on stage. It sounds like 20. And they're just really in your face with great interpretations of those Beatles songs that we love. And we're going to be with Rod Davis, and it's a lot of fun. And, of course, you have the City Winery menu with brunch items. So
yeah, I forgot about that.
Grab your friends and come and have a great brunch and just enjoy the Beatles. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, and when you do go, know that you can order during the show. That's encouraged. That's the vibe. That's what it's all about. You don't have to wait. You don't have to wait for a break. Okay, everybody. Share this, folks. If you see it, like it, know somebody that might dig the Beatles, then please share it. I'll share it. Chachi will share it. And we'll see you on Sunday. Okay, bye all.
Good night, everyone.
I'm going to end the live stream, but we'll just chat and say goodbye.